Good afternoon, colleagues. Let's start. This afternoon, we will be discussing a very interesting topic, game and money, risks of legal uncertainty. My name is Anton Suvorov, and I am a digital manager of a ProRock company. I have nothing to do with game development, but as many, I like playing games. I play much, and today I will play the role of a consumer, of a player, and I have many questions being a client, to which I hope together with speakers we will find answers to. The gaming industry is developing really fast. And according to Newzoo, the turnover in 2018 was $138 billion. 70 accounted for mobile games, and the leader is China with $34.4 billion. I'll start not from standard games, though what I'm going to say has something to do with games. And I'm sure that every participant at least once dreamed about winning this game. And the first speaker is Ludmila Karasova, a risk management leader and internal control of Center Technological Company with Stoloto 100 Lotto brand, for her to say a few words about the company. Good afternoon, colleagues. I know that you all know what lottery is. You've all played, you've seen tickets, and maybe many won. The lottery is known as a game since long ago, even in the form that we know. It's known from the 15th, 16th century. The rules are very clear, and they're very strongly regulated by the state. And they are always made publicized. Here we don't have any know-how, any new algorithms. It's very strongly regulated. But as the majority of businesses, we move online, and all lotteries can be bought online via websites and apps. And we are concerned about managing our intellectual property in this context and not violation rights of the third parties for their IP. As you understand, our main asset is software, our apps, our system for accepting bets, playing prizes. It's all our software, and the systematic management of our intellectual property is our priority. And as you know, risk management deals with all kinds of risks, carefully focusing the priority ones. Focusing on the priority ones. This is how it is in our company. Risk management in such a big company where we develop new products all the time, where there are very many external contractors and our partners, and this process is systemic. We control all the stages from the moment of creating an initiative, a project initiative. We control all the participants, the whole working team. We issue TOR. We conduct the delivery and acceptance procedure following the legislation. The program code has to be unique. Our developers sign a document confirming that this code belongs to them personally, and we try to monitor the process and not to miss anything. And I would like to specify two things with regard to building this complex system, people and technologies. It's very important in a company to conduct policy and philosophy where every team member, especially if these are several thousands people, understand that IP is very important, that we are zero tolerant to violation of others' rights, and we try and we manage effectively our rights. As far as the technology is concerned, before colleagues are convenient in accounting the intellectual property which they daily create, this process will not start functioning. That's why we manage our systems to be able to account everything created by our employees. As soon as we have started talking about app development, I would like to pass the floor to Kirill Popov, representing the company developing games and applications.
Thank you. I'm not general director yet, but I will pass your best regards to him. I'm a commercial director. And so when general directors would like to have rest, then they hand it over to us. I would like to discuss the creation of software and mobile game from the point of view of customers and us as those who make it. The main goal from the point of view of intellectual property is to combine all those elements. For example, the code, the created image or symbol, and we are to protect the rights of the individual who created it, because he has a right to a component in it. We sign a labor agreement which has a provision concerning intellectual property. In fact, we as a developer, we accumulate several intellectual properties into one, and then we hand it over to customers along with all its elements. From the point of view of games, there are two types. One intellectual property is, which I have mentioned, for example, when a script writer has created something, this script writer automatically becomes a copyright holder. And the second type is which is produced additionally. It's done to strengthen the level of protection. For instance, some trademarks which are added to a game and thus making a game unique. We as developers are mainly interested in the first type, copyright, because for us it's important the code, image, and we use in the law the term piece of art, a creative piece, because some developers like Russian letters, Cyrillic letters, or some other like Latin letters. There are some principles and concepts. The gaming process itself is not subject to copyright, because as soon as something comes out, immediately we see a lot of various clones. There is an example from a legal case. It's about Masha and Bear, the animated cartoon, which use yogurt and cheese cottage and sour cream. And during those court proceedings, they considered the case of the cartoon, and the same can be applied to games. When we combine several types of intellectual property into one To protect it, the owner of the software owner disposes of the rights. There are developers, code creators, designers, and a product will be finally protected. But what do consumers buy? When we speak about a certain buyer, is it in the form of a disc or is it something he downloads? Does he get anything? Thank you. In fact, he buys a copy of a game, and when it's installed on a smartphone or computer, it's a user passes a certain stage of a user agreement. It describes certain rules, how you can use the software. For example, you can use it for non-commercial purposes. So we say that we have no right to the content which is inside. Regarding overviews, before we started today, I spoke with colleagues and people who make reviews or streamers. They show how they play games, including your games. On the one hand, they promote your game, the content. On the other hand, they earn money. They can get some, depending on the number of their subscribers, they can get some profit from the subscribers of their channel. So, in other words, they earn money on a content which actually does not belong to them. That's true. It is still possible to obtain a strike from YouTube. There is a concept of fair use, and there is a certain number of criteria.
Просто показал чужое, преподнеся это как...
So sometimes you present it as yours. When we speak about YouTube, then you can monetize, and then you can view a video as not part of the YouTube rights. Then we don't have to get the rights of a certain rights holder. If you bought a song from iTunes, it doesn't mean that you can incorporate it in your video clip. It's not an easy topic because it's presented not as something which can be divided. There are certain criteria which are used by the court. How a content, they consider how a content was used and how different it is from the original piece. And the third aspect, whether a content was originally created on the basis of some activities. Well, we are considering a case when somebody is playing a game. I mentioned people's earning money on that because I read some statistics today. More than 20,000 people in Russia and the CIS earn money when some charity campaigns are going on, and the total amount comes not only from donations but also from some associated activities. We spoke about the use of a content some streamers, on the screen they put advertising, and it's also used by some gambling operators. On the one hand, a developer allows you to play their game, but on the other hand, it can be connected with an illegal story. Well, nowadays, the situation is changing. The most a well-known case was one which uses in its name the word bet. So they use one platform which is legal. They use a link from a portal, and then in the video they used a completely different name. So with the voice they provided a link to an illegal content, and at the bottom there was a link to an official source. So YouTube strengthens the requirements. A viewer, a player, can associate a game with something quite negative. On YouTube, donators get something for giving some emotion, because sometimes they use their voice or other expressive means. Another topic, not in all games, but some games has something inside, let's say cosmetics, something you can buy for real money.
Реальные деньги. Нажал кнопку.
For example, you see armor in a game, and you can press a button to buy this armor. Within this particular game session, if it is an article or a hat or whatever, then that's his avatar and he can use it. In a game, you can spend money on something and then you can return this money. So don't be afraid of spending money on minor things. In some games, you can buy bits of a planet. Once a gamer in a virtual club found a planet, and then at a later stage he sold it at $435,000. And then when he came to work, he was telling colleagues that I became a club owner. I increased my income by 6 times. He bought Bixley. In fact, he doesn't own anything, and this money is not protected. He bought some fun, but in some other cases you can earn. So in some games, the economic aspect, the economic side depends on the gamer's actions. I've heard that $20,000 was stolen in a game. For instance, I have an iPhone and it was stolen. I go to police and the police will investigate. Or my personal account was cracked and I got a link saying that the money I invested in a game was robbed by some illegal users. Well, if something like this happens, where should I go? How can I convince, how can I prove that this and that have happened? Yeah, there are some cases showing how real law enforcement agencies respond to cases like that.
И создание читов в том числе.
It's a profitable business. If we go to a law enforcement agency, most likely they will ask for more tangible things like a passport, contracts, or whatever. And we have very little to present for them to convince them. My answer will be that in countries different from Russia, as I understand, there is a specific, a concrete digital item, and it can be regulated by the user agreement only. It's not about me or you, but that's something a game company is happy with. So you just press a button, tick a box, and say, I agree. Some terms of use are not quite fair as far as users are concerned. In some cases, they go to the court. There were some examples. One British company added a provision in a license agreement that a gamer will have to get his first symbol, first character. It's quite fragile. When you press a button, buy or transfer money from your card, then you believe in buying something. Yeah, when we go to the cinema or for a concert, we buy tickets. The only thing a person owns is his login and password. I agree. Access to your personal account. We know we own only several digits, and that's something we can sell. When we look at the screen, we see changes going on it. Okay, let's continue to travel across the virtual world. And now Pavel Postnikov, Director of Digitalism, he will tell us something about what his company is doing and the technologies they use.
Добрый день.
Good afternoon. We deal not only with real reality, also virtual reality,
А также изучение нейронных сетей и машин-ленинга.
and machine learning.
Провел презентацию на сегодняшнее выступление, но буду пробегаться по ней только быстро.
I will use a PowerPoint presentation. The company is called Futurism, and it's a mix of physical, digital, and many things are bought not only in real life, but also in the digital life, in the digital world. Our company started from one case. It was in 2013, 2014, when the trilogy about Hobbit was released. An artist in Moscow wanted to cheat he wanted to inflame the Saurin eye and hang it over Moscow.
Был против всей этой идеи РПЦ.
And the party which was against was the Russian Orthodox Church. So this idea was blocked, and the founder of the company, in the augmented reality, placed the Saurin eye there. And that was an illustration of things that can be implemented in augmented reality. That was a historical event. Like yesterday, we got pictures of a black hole. Like here, since 5 years ago, we are immersing in augmented reality where we can own something. And many cases are related to art galleries, which we display in small spaces, in small rooms, where you can buy paintings. The users of apps, and it was Art Life, an exhibition center in Moscow, where it was possible to scan QR code to see digital paintings, digitalized paintings. Those in a hidden composition. And those pictures were painted, were sold. It was possible to buy through a hidden auction, and it was possible to, at an auction, be the final buyer. Is it possible to buy something and place in your home in augmented reality? Potentially, it is possible. I am interested in the augmented reality where you can combine reality and some images. When you put on glasses, augmented glasses, and live in a poorly furbished room, furbished virtually by modern expensive furniture. What I am talking about, and this is a very good example of a slide, that was in 1900s when Henry Ford invented a car. And in 1913, in the first image, you can hardly see, just in 1900, it's just one car in the flow of carriages. And in 1913, it's one carriage among a flow of traffic. All the changes are helping place very fast. What do you think is this? A robot? This is a washing machine. Sometimes it's difficult to imagine how technologies can develop. And fantasy artists were creating their images. We just optimize things. And when things are bought in virtual reality, similar things happen. We invent new interfaces for interaction. Originally, computers could be only operated by a simple console command. And now we have other interfaces. And now we are in the next user interface. And our tablets use a sensor panel for introducing data just with fingers. And in the future, and this is what we are approximating, and we're experimenting a lot, we develop technologies. It's an interface of augmented reality, which will surround us. and we will be able to interact with that augmented reality. A device called Leap Motion will be used to manage virtual objects. It's magic. What is it otherwise? And this is the direction to develop when we optimize devices. And this is how it will work. And I heard that in healthcare they use it. And we also use it in a number of our projects. There was one case, a technological cell, when with a HoloLens, it was possible to help technologists not only to make a technological chart, but also to see a component which would be produced finally. We cooperate with a workshop producing carbon, and they produce matrices for things made from carbon. And the plan is that a person in the future will put on special glasses and see the final product before it is even designed. And this will save hours and days of training. And just by wearing special glasses, one can become a real designer, a real professional. Now, when you get a prescription and instruction about how to cook something, you do it. In our case, it's exactly the same. The same is happening in multiplayer mode when you can interact in augmented reality. To understand how much the augmented reality is becoming part of our life, you understand what is going on. This is the precedent when masks in augmented reality started to be used as fun for entertainment. And now in Facebook, there is a platform to produce masks in augmented reality, which any person can produce. And probably these masks can be sold. In Instagram, you can be a user of your own mask, and you are the unique owner. It can be absolutely great, and someone else may express an interest in buying it. And there are sellers in Instagram, and you can buy a mask which belongs to the developer. We sell hats in this context. This is what is happening. The same about Pokemon Go, which was a boom in Russia 2 years ago. These are digital things, and people were ready to suffer, were ready to do some unbelievable things to get those. And the mechanics itself of VR, AR is simple and complex. And the most banal example is the film Space Jam.
Действительно, то, что происходит.
What's going on is mind-blowing. In the past, we were selling for real money digital objects in one's computer. Now, there is no need in having a computer. A phone is enough to demonstrate something. And for instance, to buy a painting and to put it on a wall in your house, you will be the owner of the painting. But to see it, you will have to have an augmented reality device. But while you have a basic code as an app, no one else will be able to use it. And in the same way, there is a mixed reality technology. Virtual reality is when we immerse in the virtual world and don't see anything around us. Augmented reality is when the object overlaps our reality. And now there are several cases from DK 6DIE scanning quickly our surrounding reality to interact for virtual objects to interact with real life. Scanning will be done in the future a lot quicker, and you will be able to give your 5 to a virtual creature. And in Japan, there was a man. And maybe you have heard about digital objects, digital singers in Instagram. And there is a case when a Japanese man married a digital woman. And this is a registered, officially marriage, and they say he is happy. We will not go that far. Instruments are developing extremely fast. Technologies are galloping into the future. 5 years ago, it was impossible to think that we will be immersing so deeply into the augmented reality. And we're using phones as scanners. And a camera is enough to use the ORCID technology. These are the easiest way of scanning the surroundings. My presentation, my PowerPoint presentation is done. What's next? Let's get back, because I am concerned about this matter of the virtual furnishing of my flat. If I can use virtual furniture in my apartment, will I be able to buy a virtual painting created by an artist using the VR helmet, using a tracker? I buy it for real money. I put this painting on the wall in my apartment. I have a virtual wife walking around the flat. What will I get in reality, having all these things? Will I have any property in this case? Or it's again will be some users' agreements. As a company producing open things, don't fix them under consumers' contract. We're a small company. It's a greater pleasure when we are referred to, when we are downloaded and used. We are talking about digital things which don't exist until an instrument is used to see those, to view those. I believe that interior designers in the future, based on real landscape, will be designing a virtually designed room. For instance, it's a white apartment. You put augmented reality glasses, and then you just introduce pieces of furniture and carpets. And you can also experiment with materials of the floor, of the walls, and then you will be buying with money emotions. As a developer of those virtual things, can you say what will be cheaper to produce, to buy a real sofa from IKEA or to draw a virtual sofa? I can say that in most, when you buy it just online, then it's good on the pictures, but it may not fit in your flat. And there was a case when in augmented reality you could just try a lot from IKEA. Together with Samsung, we also introduced the possibility of putting a TV set on your wall to see what it will look like in your interior. The mechanics of augmented reality helps through previewing of a copy to buy the right thing you need. It depends on the sofa. There are various different sofas, but you need to understand that it's one thing when we buy a specific sofa, we bring it from IKEA, and they don't have it there any longer. They need to produce a new one. And then as part of creating content for the developer, it's a similar product. We will spend more to create a virtual sofa because more people will be involved. It's not a mass production, but as far as users are concerned, a developer will make one sofa, but then he will able to sell it to 1 million, 1 billion people. It depends on the developer. He can make a copy saying we have only 5 copies and those will be sold within a limited period of time. And this how the commercial side of the virtual production developed, because no one will want to have a sofa which is the same for 1 million consumers. But in IKEA, there's millions and billions of consumers having the same sofas. But we know what are the prices in IKEA. We deal with neuron links, neuron networks. A neuron network can create an object, and it's a philosophical matter.
A mathematician who wrote a neurons network, and so it's a soulless code. We can say that a neuron network, it can generate 1 million or 1 billion, we can say. A man is not used to it, and it takes time. A picture created by a neuron network was sold at a very high price. Yesterday, something happened when a painter generated a sculpture in a neuron network and later assembled it. He redeveloped it into a computer program in which it was generated. It's a little performance, but originally, I think the original price was $3,000. When you describe these two things, we can say we think generally, and then you promote the whole design and make it obsolete. If we give a task to a neuron network to produce a strong material, we will get something unusual, but the task will be accomplished. I need, with minimal costs of material costs, make the strongest object, and by doing so, it should also look nice. After several data sets, I can try several color schemes, and most likely it will be a success. Creating a table, it will have some holes, it will be very firm, but the minimum amount of material will be used. As soon as I print it myself, I get the only piece on the planet. Nobody else can produce the same, because it was me who has just generated it. Should I buy a neuron network for myself to have it at home? Yes, it was also my question. Can we buy a neuron network? Because if a creator has created a neuron network, perhaps he can create as an extra one. You can get access with your codes. At work, when I'm at work, one of my tasks is that I need to review somebody's works. It's just to evaluate other people's work. Sometimes I need a tutor on YouTube to explain me how it works. And the same concerns neural networks. Recently, we have launched a network generated by Microsoft, and we are also developing Gen Boosts. We generate images that resemble very much of reality. So such neural networks exist in which you can make drawings, like in the Paint software. It's like a tool to optimize your work, so you can become a marvelous painter. For instance, a prism. You can produce a realistic picture and transform it into a standard oily painting. You can use the data set of Van Gogh, this Star Night, the painting. So most likely it's a generation of script things. So once there was a task to generate a cat, and it was terrible. Cats had 3 eyes, or sometimes a female cat brought a dead baby. As soon as a neural network becomes mostly effective, they will start to sell it. So what we try to do, we try to make it easily available and preferably for free. The knowledge of humans is the best that anyone has on the planet. It's not something you can generate. It's the strongest thing which is impossible to forge. If somebody has something to add, to resume, to summarize, it's not really a summary. So who is the owner? Who is the creator of intellectual property? The one who created a neural network. 2 programmers created neural networks, and so they participated in a battle. It was a purely intellectual property. So they made it perhaps even better than many rap song performers. So it concerns the rights to intellectual property. Okay, let me summarize then. Today we realize that technologies are developing rapidly, and some objects that we buy, some characters already relate to the past. Now we can create our virtual apartments. We can add virtual wives to those apartments. But the legal framework is lagging behind, because the development is fast, and finding something to fill the gap, it's not always possible when we buy some equipment, new gadgets, or an iPhone. But regarding an app, we are not buying an application. So the law shouldn't lag behind. There should be a system which can see these types of property and protects them. Thank you all. I have a question. It concerns, you started from the beginning. You started with streaming in the beginning. As far as I understood from the speakers, you are different representatives of GM Dell as Amazon purchased Twitch for $1 billion. It happened already pretty long ago, so it might be even more expensive now. When it was purchased, there was also some information that Trichun, Russia, generates some income, and it ranks fourth in terms of its income level. So it's comparable with operators in the States or other countries. In the beginning, you said that streamers are abusing when they use the game content. There was a game from Electronic Arts which was included in the charts without any single PR campaign. Until the last moment, nobody knew that it would come out. When it was released, the number of viewers was between 300 and 400,000. I'm wondering about the relationships between a streamer and developers in Russia, whether a strategy is going to be introduced, because it's a trend in Russia. The target group is clean, it's pure. It combines people who are interested in that. And if those companies plan to deal with streamers, how will it be?
Let me say a few words. This game caused a boom. It's known that all popular streamers on Twitch, Americans, I will not give you the names, they all 1 week in advance, 2 weeks in advance, came to the Office of Electronic Arts and learned to play the game for the launch day to launch the stream. It's just a different way of marketing promotion. And they earned from $1 million for that. And when we say streamers abuse computer games, maybe it was the wrong word. They don't abuse. This story with the stream reminded me that everything good is repeated twice. It's also very popular jazz chatting, and it reminded me the mid-1990s MTV, Muz TV, with a person saying something between clips, and then some SMS messages are seen on the screen, so similar to VGs. It's ideal. It's what I call ideal advertising. It's the type of advertising when you invest the minimal amount of means. Apex Legend, if they paid streamers, but anyway, it was the minimal amount of money invested. There is another case of a similar game, the mechanics of which is popular on Twitch. It's very simple, and they invested only into one trailer, and it is called Beat Saber. Beat Saber, if you don't know, is the game when you beat in swords, just hitting either a red or a blue cube. It is still in top chart lists, and I am one of the fans, because this is nothing better for you to beat, because you get tired, because you really strain your muscles, and you can just sweat in reality. And the fabric of the back of the virtual glasses is all wet. They manage somehow to guess, and it's like in a lottery that in such through such a small PR campaign, or they managed to very carefully estimate, predict the outcome. It's an interesting game. However, there was a danger that before releasing a game, and Electronic Arts does this, a lot of advertising, imposing advertising, native advertising is organized before a game is released. And people are tired from advertising, and it is so pressing that they don't want to watch it any longer. And sometimes viewers, because of too much advertising, they lose customers. It should be a minimal amount of advertising. It should be targeted advertising for the person to start thinking, oh, I would like to get more, but he will get more in a period of time, say in 6 months. And the advertising should be so good that the interest shouldn't be heated up. Sometimes advertising is given in the form of a puzzle. There is one marketing poster when during 1 month you are giving small portions, and the audience starts to play in conspirology, trying to guess what will be next. And people start discussing things, and through doing that, they advertise and promote this or that product. I remember a situation on Twitch when for 24 hours they were streaming a room with a girl in it, and it turned out to be a reveal of something. Kirill, I hope, will agree with me. The overdoing of advertising, when people watch advertisements and then instead of going and playing, they watch others playing the game and don't pay anything to the developer. There is a saying just to miss the game, or to go through the game on YouTube or Twitch. In the past, if the technical requirements in a game were too high and your computer was inadequate or your smartphone was inadequate, you could watch it on YouTube or Twitch. But I can say what I can say about myself. It's necessary to follow the game trends, but the more you instead of though I sometimes have an opportunity to play, sometimes I will prefer watching someone playing the game, because a person, if he doesn't play regularly, he loses the skill. That's why it's sometimes better to watch a streamer, a professional doing it. Any more questions? You were saying that a streamer goes through a game, the game is advertised, and the streamer doesn't allow for a permission for the game from the developer, violating somehow a copyright or another right. And a question in this context, is it practical to sue those streamers in court? Yes, we discussed it. In the beginning, I know that Nintendo company doesn't like, at least several years ago, they didn't like when their games were shown on YouTube. That's why a person which uploaded the game there, then it was immediately deleted. And it depends on the developer. Many developers are interested in that because this is a word of the mouth advertising, because people watch, people play. There are companies with positive attitude to that, and these are in a majority, but there are also exceptions. And as far as I know, for streamers who receive a game earlier, there are certain conditions that they can show this and that levels, but nothing else. These are the limitations. I wanted to add that indie developers, they pledge for any response, and even if it is negative feedback, they get a lot of hype, even if comments are really negative, because any advertising, bad or good, is good advertising. So, and this is what is happening in Japan mostly. I have the second question about Lotto.
A couple of months ago, there was some news that someone is playing games and it's about 1 million. So I cannot upload the page on my smartphone to see it. So it's 1 to 100,000, the likelihood of winning. So has the attitude towards Quattro changed? No, it hasn't changed. People know it's unlikely to win the super prize. At the same time, you can study the statistics and you will see that people still win. And we have some lottery called Raspil, meaning that money will be just split between friends, and announcements are disseminated. And for the last time, Raspil took place in March, but 2 persons managed to get a prize. They took all the money, so the originators thought they would get all the money. So 5 digits is easier to guess. I think no statistics can beat one piece of news that somebody won a lot of dollars in a lottery or travel around the world. So a person had his favorite number, and he persistently put a stake on that number. In this context, can you protect your combination of digits? More questions? I'm a student of the Baltic Federal State University. I have several questions. One concerns the legal component. There was a war between shops, Epic Game Store and Steam. So on the one hand, competition is a positive thing, we know. But then Launcher is a game store. They are responsible for the number of your games in Steam. And Steam responded in such a way because those who steal the shop offers you the goods, but at a better price. So my question is, how can you regulate it based on the international experience? And do you think it's an example of competition? All of us understand why it happened. We know who launched the Epic Game Store. It was Sergei Galunkin. I think it's the same when you install a Epic Game Store launcher. Then there is a feature which will be used, so you accept the terms of use. It's again the same as I said. The terms of use cannot cover everything. I think the industry itself is not interested in that. So if you can create such a paper when you simply tick a box, so why should you bother about anything else? Everybody knows about uniform advertising.
Контекстная. Контекстная реклама, да. Потому что
our smartphones listen to us. I don't know where I can find this tick that they allow us to listen to Facebook and to offer something to buy. A young couple switched off all the everything on their smartphones, and at about 2 o'clock they started to conduct a dialogue on cats, and after 2 days on the internet, so they started to see the advertising of kitty cat. I have recently noticed as well that advertising starts to come out. On 3D printer, we have a conversation, and then advertising tells us where I can buy a 3D printer, and it's terrible because I don't know how the information about me is collected. I had a similar story. I thought to change a car. I did not apply for anything. I didn't leave any information anywhere. Maybe I only put some text in a search agent. In the evening, on the same day, somebody from a car dealer called me and asked whether I would like to buy another car. So somehow they collect the information about you. And the same in Moscow. In metro, they have Wi-Fi for free. As soon as you get connected, there is a tick. There is a box which you tick, and it says your phone IMEI number will be recorded, and now a big data set is created so that in the future they will send you SMS. Something like spring is coming, why don't you go to McDonald's and have a hamburger? So it's against our will. On the one hand, it is supposed to be for our benefit, but on the other hand, it's against our will. If somebody is willing, if it is stored on a server, then you move from various stations. If you go to one station in the morning and then another station in the evening, that means you work. Or if you go to the university metro station, and it's quite likely that you are a student. That's how they analyze your occupational activities. So it's about big brothers watching you. My question number 2 concerning Steam and good things. Some like it, some hate it.
Лотерея внутри игры.
So lot boxes. So lottery is inside, and everyone proposes you to buy a key for the next box. In Norway, they prohibited it. It's not regulated in our country. Steam has much of that. How can it be regulated in our country? Because I think it's to the detriment of of the industry. So everyone knows Battlefield is going to introduce something. How can you provide for legal protection? What do experts think? And don't you think it's a negative phenomenon? Yes, indeed, it's related to lottery. Don't buy them. Why do you spend money on them? Stop buying them. But people do. They create those roulette websites when you put some articles and there is a chance you will win something. It's a disaster. And I don't know how it will be. Well, I can imagine how it will be in our country. All IPs will be banned. Like baiting companies, you can get there. In our holding company, we have bookmaking. It's regulated. You need to have assets worth 1 billion. Otherwise, you will be deprived of a license. They have very rigid rules concerning identification. You are supposed to go to a certain point with your ID, and you are to pay per capita tax. On the same hand, at the same time, there is this .com zone. And we are not competitive because we ask you to come and present your passport and pay taxes. Concerning lottery, since 2014, all lotteries have been state, and you are supposed to apply for a license. If you conduct this lottery online, you are to apply for a permit. Those companies which do it, they violate. In most countries, lotteries are regulated by the state. And in most countries, there are some charges. An amount is deducted. In the States, in Russia and China. So it concerns the jurisdiction of a company. It may be possible in an offshore. I don't like how they do it in Europe, in some Scandinavian countries. They said lot box are possibles, but before you press a button, a person needs to know what is inside. So in Europe, they consider it to be gambling. And concerning roulettes, streamers were popular. They were promoting it and generated income, but now they are closed. You need to work on that. You may have noticed we don't have this lottery like Coca-Cola bottles, and you can expect something under the cap. So now it's not allowed anymore. I would like to reply to Anton. Don't buy lot box. Casinos are not allowed in Russia. But as for lot box, yes, it's a kind of gaming because it depends on good luck if you win or not. I have two more questions. One is to Kirill Popov. We have DTF on vk.com. So this article is about the development of mobile games, describing disadvantages and advantages of a popular IP. What do you think? Is it reasonable? Isn't it an excessive risk to use a popular IP? Or why shouldn't you develop something of your own? Normally, developers use intellectual property to reduce the risk. It concerns the e-games company because all sports are involved and they pay a lot of money. If it's about hockey, UFC, then the leagues are interested to use them as fighters. There were many scandals when football players felt offended because it was something not in line with the reality. Usually, big publishers use an IP, but when we speak about abuse, it's again that some ideas have been invented already, and sometimes it's easier to make a copy. You can easily make a copy by changing just slightly a character. You had a strong desire to be on the top of the list.
It seems to me, look at filmmaking industry. Series of films, number 1, 2, 3, 4. And all kinds of games. They're also developed in new versions. So they use a half-forgotten IP that can be a source of income, because if it's just the name Skyrim, you know it, you used to play it, and you expect to buy something similar, something which you liked in the past. And if it is some new name, then it's unlikely that you will buy it. The brand is known, and that's why it is used more readily compared to developing a new IP. This is a rather futuristic question to Pavel. It's about intellectual property and neural networks. I start from afar. There is standard
Template
structures A small computer with which from any materials available, any available resources created for colonists of space. It's about a game, new things which were needed. And any colonist, the most illiterate one, using a keyboard, just ordered, posed an order to computer to make a car from sticks and wind. And the structure was developed, and then fuel was offered by a computer, say firewood. Don't you think that this is what we will have in the future, as you described it? What we experience now is the initial stage of what we are going to have in the future.
Недостаточно было иметь СШК, нужно было иметь
In that game, you needed to have a block scheme of that object. And all those schemes were lost, and everything got rusty, and they couldn't reproduce anything. Oh, now we know who are the fans of that game. Yes, to a certain extent, this is so. Mass culture can show what we will have in future. You all remember the Star Trek series. This was a precursor to the folding smartphone. Then it was just a fantasy in the game about what it can look like. And then apparently the function and the design was borrowed from that series. The example of the neuron networks in that game is the same, and apparently it's a fantasy at the moment, but with our technologies we are approaching it. And I gave an example of how a neuron network can, better than a human being, calculate the most optimal structure. And then in the future, it can be given a task, and it will fulfill it with a greater success than a human being. Say you are given 2 pieces of paper to start a bonfire. Say you have a 3D printer and you have an object you need to create. You need plastic for it, and it will choose the objects which it has around it, and it will use it as raw material. A 3D printer can be filled in not only with plastic but also with chocolate, and then it will be a chocolate object. The neuron network will tell you how to make sausage from plastic. Why not? Or an object from sausage. Neuron networks can do anything. All they need is a data set. And this is the greatest problem now. We can't bring up that together. And it was in my presentation. I'm talking about deep fake. This is the neuron network, which, based on data set from photos of celebrities, comprise a data set for replacing a face of the person. Now, in one video, for the face of another person. Hype is another example, and the first video which was used, where they replaced the question or the face of a porno actress with the face of Golda Dot, and she had to then explain that it wasn't her. VR technologies are working. They are moving ahead thanks to porno industry, and I forgot what was the second driver. And Probably we will be moving on technologies which need to be developed, self-educating neuron networks. But before that, we need to set up an atolon. An image and a word, say a kitten and a carpet, and based on that model, a kitten can be designed from a carpet. When it is possible, then this kind of neuron networks will be the most efficient ones. The networks which independently will be able to create products. But then a neuron network can replace me as a designer. And such works saying, and if you say, I see a bird with a blue tail and a red tail, and you press the button, and then the system generates this image, and it looks realistic. And the data set was just comprised of the images of other birds, and the network just processed your order. Now the neuron networks, though they exist since 50 years ago, they are still a raw product, and it's only now that they start the active phase of development, because we have shifted to video cards, central processors. Before the moment those were emerged, people didn't know how to generate things because there wasn't one compact computer. There were only huge AFMs of the size of a building. But in the future, we will be able to generate not only data sets, but also instructions for development and scan the environment to be able to create a car from the chairs in this hall. But then we will have to identify who the right holder is, who is the author. If we consider neuron networks as an instrument, then it's the person who creates the network is the author. So let's wrap up now. In the beginning, we were unsure whether we will have enough to discuss during 1 hour, and we have been talking 40 minutes more, and we can easily continue this discussion, which we will do. Thanks for attending the panel.